Lloydie, the Demons. It was another poor loss from Simon Goodwin's men. Have you seen enough?
Well, I've been thinking, obviously, watching Melbourne, and you look at their record since they last won the premiership, and they've just been on the decline since. So they went out in straight sets in 2 final series. So you see 2022, fantastic season, 16-6, but out in straight sets. 2023, again, good season, but out in straight sets. And it's been a real decline since then. And I've heard them talk about what they need to address over the off-season, and yet we sit here at the completion of round 14, and they are a bottom 4 club.
So what are you saying?
What I'm saying is Simon Goodwin is contracted at the end of next year, but I would consider moving on Simon Goodwin at the end of the year for the reason that do they need fresh ideas? And I respect Simon. He's a premiership coach and he's brought a lot of success to Melbourne. But do they need a fresh set of eyes overseeing the program? Just come in while you've got Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney, Pickett, Maid-Lever. There's stars out there, but the same problems happen at Melbourne. So they miss shots, poor inside 50 entries, the lack of connection, and they've had moments and patches through the last 6 weeks, which is okay, but we're still hearing the same things over the weekend and the same problems. And
we heard a few of them from the man himself, Simon Goodwin, after the game.
Clearly, the way we entered the ball inside 50 certainly wasn't to the standard that, it needs to be. It was a bit of everything, our decision-making, our ability to lower our eyes, our ability to airily have an impact when we had our opportunities, our ability to stay calm and composed and really finish the play.
That is a non-repeat type of statement, isn't it, from Simon Goodwin post-match? And to Lordo's point, it has been happening since the 2023 final series, where they did kick themselves out of it in 2 consecutive finals. So, Lordo, it's interesting to hear you say, though, that it should be a change at the coaching level and not necessarily the people around the coach, because that's also been in focus, the people around Simon Goodwin, and equally a change to the playing list. I mean, these mistakes are what he's referring to, and this is why he's on repeat. They're missing goals and they're losing games in a very similar fashion.
Yeah, so they've changed CEO already.
Yep.
Oh, they're about to.
Incoming, yep.
Yeah, and then they've got the new president.
New president.
Yeah, so, but I'm not sure. So that's happening. But on field, Jimmy just spoke about DeConing and what he's maybe looking for, about change and seeing something. I just think that's the time it is at Melbourne. Like, I think the on-field stuff, to me, as I said, it's a broken record, and that's why I think, do they go in another year and just put faith in him that it's suddenly going to turn around next year? Because all the players are out there. Like, they've got generational type players and they're finishing bottom 4.
And they've locked themselves into those deals, Jimmy, as we take a look at what they have done with their contracting of senior players on long-term deals. And there's big, massive money attached to pretty much all of those deals, even inclusive of Jacob Van Rooyen, who has not performed to expectation. I know he's still a young player in the system, but that's a long-term deal. Is that suffocating when you look at that now, knowing how they're playing in 2025, some of those players on that list? You take Gawn out of that equation.
Yeah, look, if they're going to move forward, they're going to have an adjustment in their game plan. I think we all acknowledge the way that they're playing isn't sustainable. The game has moved on from that heavy load of bang, crash, contested footy. And, of course, the mix. They went with the mix that they spruiked about, Gawn, Oliver, Petrarca and Viney in the midfield. Now, they won the footy, but they're not getting it done with their ball use on the weekend. So I'm not saying get rid of them, but is there opportunities to actually play the younger players in the more important role? So next year going forward, do we see more of Lindsay in there? Do we see more of Langford in there? Is Cozzy more 50-50 midfield? So they've got the young talent. Tholstrop, does he come through the midfield as well? So they're going to need to refresh the ideas as well and game style to actually catch up with some of these sides that have gone past them.
Jimmy mentioned Pickett. What did you make of his game on the weekend? The tale of 2 halves it was.
It was. So he was the best player for Melbourne in that first half. And then, like his team, late in the piece, they got blown away. So just 2 disposals. So we saw he got a knock. So I'd like to give him
the benefit
of the doubt with the knock, because, he was exquisite again in that first half.
Sam, you know the trade space as well as anyone. As we look at what Pickett is doing in the most recent game after signing that 9-year deal last week, look, we talked regularly in the lead up to last year's trade period about what could happen to some of those names on that list. Oliver, obviously, Petrarca as well. I personally expect those 2 names again to be talked about in the trade period. Are you hearing the same thing this time around?
I'd be surprised. Look, it doesn't look like they're going to make the 8. So I'd be surprised if clubs don't circle again. The thing that interests me with Melbourne, Jimmy, is that we've been talking about their lack of key forwards for a while now, and yet outside of Taylor Walker a few years ago before he re-signed, I can't really remember them being linked to chasing one. And we've got, I know Jamar is in a different space, and we'll talk about him in a second, so maybe he's not the guy, but Oscar Allen available, and yet Melbourne never seem to get linked to these guys.
No, we don't know the big idea. Now, we don't know whether they've got plans, behind closed doors and they've had a run at them and they've just got a flat no. But you find a lot of these key forwards get locked up for a considerable amount of time. But what is the big idea that they're throwing up on the whiteboard? Like, how could they execute it? I think with the advantage now, we're moving to multiple drafts that you can trade into, of course, with picks as well. But what would be the big idea key forward? And if you can't get one, well, you've got to shift the game plan, because if you're going to just dump the ball long inside forward 50 with no real key options, you're not going to win. You're not going to kick big enough scores.
So we bought in Nathan Jones this year. But
midfield coach.
As a midfield coach, but I'm not sure what else has changed. So that's what I'll never forget. When Damien Hardwick, I said the same thing about Damien. And it was this, he stayed, they supported Damien, and he said it's one of the great decisions they ever made. But in came Blake Carosello, Justin Lepich.
Yeah, it was the end of 2016, wasn't it?
2016, there was a whole suite of change, and he changed. And it was a totally different brand of football. And I think if Simon is to stay, I think that's what it might be. Need a whole suite of coaches to come in and change his ideas.